May 28, 1940, Reich Air Ministry, Berlin. Reich Marshal Hermann Göring put down the intelligence report with clear contempt. The paper explained President Roosevelt's request to Congress for a huge increase in American airplane production, a plan to make 50,000 planes every year. The Americans are desperate if they think this kind of propaganda will scare us, Göring told his staff. They know nothing about war production. Let them try to change their car factories. They will see that building warplanes is not just about assembly lines. What Göring did not understand was that in Detroit, a Danish immigrant named William Cudson was already proving him wrong. The former General Motors president, now working for just $1 a year as Roosevelt's production chief, was leading the biggest industrial change in human history. Within 4 years, American factories would produce not just the impossible 50,000 planes that Göring dismissed, but almost 100,000 planes each year, while also supplying 2 wars happening at the same time across opposite oceans. The statement that caused German contempt happened on May 16, 1940, as German tanks raced through France. Standing in front of Congress, Franklin Roosevelt said, "I want this nation ready to make at least 50,000 planes every year." People were skeptical, even our allies. In 1939, America had only made 3,611 planes, which made the plan seem impossible. Military aircraft. The Army Air Corps had only 1,700 combat planes, and many were old and outdated. Yet Roosevelt demanded a 14 times increase in production. William Cudson became the main planner of this amazing achievement. When asked who could reach such impossible production, presidential advisor Bernard Baru said, "First, Bill Cudson. Second, Bill Cudson. Third, Bill Cudson." Cudson had given up his $300,000 salary to serve his new country, bringing car-making mass production ideas to airplane factories. The change started right away. By December 1941, American factories were making 2,000 military aircraft every month, 20 times more than just 2 years earlier. The Ford Motor Company announced plans for a huge bomber plant at Willow Run, Michigan. Boeing grew its Seattle factories. Douglas Aircraft hired thousands of new workers. The arsenal of democracy was coming alive. The Nazi leaders ignored American abilities because of both racial prejudice and willful blindness. General Friedrich von Berthica, military attaché in Washington from 1933 to 1941, sent correct reports showing American industrial mobilization. His December 1940 message warned, "American war production will reach unimaginable heights." Berlin ignored these warnings as defeatist exaggeration. When Berthica met Hitler in February 1939 to talk about American potential, the Führer ranted about American racial degeneracy instead of listening to intelligence reports. Hitler said Americans were half Judaized, half negrified, and could not fight a long war. This blind thinking would be very costly. The prejudice went through every level. Luftwaffe intelligence ignored reports of women working in airplane factories as if it was a small joke or unimportant sign of American weakness. Desperation. They could not imagine that a democratic country could organize better than a totalitarian one. When reports came in that factories were running 3 shifts, German analysts thought it was an exaggeration. The Nazi way of thinking just could not accept the American reality. Ford's Willow Run plant showed American ambition. Built on farmland starting April 18, 1941, it became the largest factory in the world under one roof, 3.5 million square feet, with an assembly line that stretched 1 mile long. Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief, promised to make 1 B-24 Liberator bomber every hour when other factories could only make 1 per day. At first, the results were terrible. The first bomber, finished in September 1942, had to be completely rebuilt. Half of the work had quality problems. By February 1943, Willow Run made only 56 bombers a month instead of hundreds as promised. Critics called it, "Will it run?" But Ford engineers kept working hard, breaking the B-24's 488,193 parts into smaller sub-assemblies. They made hydraulic riveting tools, pre-made wiring harnesses, and moving assembly lines. They handled 578 design changes in 1943 alone, while keeping production going. By September 1943, the plant made 148 bombers per month, By December, it made 365. The big breakthrough came in April 1944, when Willow Run made 428 B-24s, one every 63 minutes, working 24 hours a day. This one factory was making more planes than the whole German aviation industry. German pilots first saw how good American production was during the Tunisia campaign. Major Johannes Steinhoff, leader of JG-77, noticed in December 1942, "The American pilots are no longer amateurs. Most worrying, there are more of them every day." This news spread quickly through 1943. January 27th was the first American raid on Germany itself, with 64 bombers attacking Wilhelmshaven. By October, during Black Thursday at Schweinfurt, the Americans could lose 60 B-17 and replace them in just 2 weeks. The numbers could not be ignored. During Big Week, February 20th to 25th, 1944, the 8th and 15th Air Forces flew 3,500 bomber missions against German aircraft factories. The Luftwaffe lost between 262 and 355 fighters, but more importantly, about 100 irreplaceable veteran pilots. General Adolf Galland told Göring that Germany was losing 1,200 fighters every month, while only making 1,000. America was producing 2,500 fighters per month, while losing only 400. Major Heinz Baer, one of Germany's top aces with 220 victories, described a January 1944 mission over Brunswick. The bomber stream stretched from one horizon to the other, at least 700 flying fortresses and liberators. We were 8 fighters against hundreds. It was hopeless. By 1944, American airplane production reached incredible numbers. That year alone, factories made 96,270 aircraft, 16,048 four-engine bombers, 35,743 fighters, and 22,591 multi-engine planes. This single year's production was more than Germany's entire wartime output of about 94,677 planes. Aircraft. The difference went beyond just numbers. Each American bomber had 13.50 caliber machine guns with thousands of bullets. German fighters often took off with only some of their ammo. American bombers had powered turrets, advanced bomb sights, and smart navigation equipment. German fighters often did not even have working radios. Boeing's Seattle Plant 2 was making 16 B-17s every day by May 1944. Douglas Aircraft, which had only 68 workers in 1936, had grown to 167,000 employees across 9 factories. North American Aviation was making 500 P-51 Mustangs every month. Lockheed produced 1 P-38 Lightning every 90 minutes, while adding 2,127 combat-driven changes. Supporting industries worked just as fast. General Motors made 57,658 aircraft engines under license. Packard built 55,523 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. Alcoa's aluminum production went up 600%. Dow Chemicals grew magnesium production from 6 million a year to 333 million. The change in America's workforce shocked the Nazis. Women, who were less than 1% of aircraft workers in 1941, became 65% by 1943. That was 310,000 women in the aircraft industry. At Douglas Long Beach, 22,380 of 41,620 workers were women. Roswell Monroe, the first Rosie the Riveter, put in 3,000 rivets per shift at Willow Run with 99.5% accuracy. Women inspectors at Douglas cut defect rates from 3.2% to 0.3%. Ford changed tools for smaller hands, which also made work faster. Lighter pneumatic tools made workers less tired, and better workstations lowered injuries. German intelligence thought having women work was a sign of desperation. A captured Luftwaffe report said these women were only temporary and predicted that quality would fail. Instead, precision got better. Women were excellent at detailed work, wiring, instruments, inspections. Their involvement showed democratic strength, not weakness. As American production grew faster, Germany lived in fantasy. Göring approved the Jagger program in February 1944, spreading production into 729 underground factories using slave labor. The middle complex had 60,000 prisoners working in terrible conditions, and 20,000 died. These underground factories made more defective parts than planes. Slave workers sabotaged components. Moving materials between the scattered factories caused delays. Quality control failed. The whole middlework complex made fewer engines every month than Ford's single plant in Chicago. Meanwhile, American innovation kept growing. Boeing built B-29s in modules across 4 factories with fully interchangeable parts. The pressurized B-29, costing $65,000 each, had technology Germany could not even match in prototypes. By early 1945, America was making 100 B-29s every month. June 6, 1944, showed the full power of American production. The invasion used 11,590 Allied aircraft against only 319 German planes, a 36-to-1 advantage. This was not just a tactical edge, it was total industrial destruction. Between January and May 1944, bombing raids dropped 145,000 tons on German targets, more than all German bombing of Britain during the entire war. Transport planes delivered 3 airborne divisions in one day, using more aircraft than Germany's whole transport fleet ever had. By December 1944, single raids had 1,200 bombers escorted by 900 fighters. P-51 Mustangs had the range to reach Poland, the performance to match any enemy, and existed in such large numbers that losses did not matter. German pilots called them Indians because they seemed to be everywhere at the same time. As defeat came closer, even Nazi leaders admitted the production disaster. In December 1944, Goebbels wrote in his diary, "Göring's promises about Luftwaffe superiority now seem like criminal delusions. We fight the world's greatest industrial power with only words." RML told his staff before D-Day, "The Americans can lose 10 tanks for every one we destroy and still defeat us. When they land, they will come with such huge material power that no position can hold." Even Hitler told Scheer in January 1945, "We should have listened to Bertika's reports. Their industrial potential was decisive. While we made hundreds, they made tens of thousands." Albert Schar later said that American bombing cut German production by 35% for tanks, 31% for aircraft, and 42% for trucks. He said clearly that the American attacks, which followed a clear system of hitting industrial targets, caused the collapse of German weapons production. Germany's M262 jet fighter, operational in mid-1944, was a real innovation, 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter. Hitler and Göring thought this amazing weapon could win back air superiority even though they had fewer planes. But Germany made only 1,430 M262s total, and never more than 200 were flying at the same time. Engines had to be fixed every 10 hours. Important materials were missing, so they had to use weaker substitutes. America, at the same time, had started jet development in 1942. While the Bell P-59 was worse than German jets, Lockheed's P-80 Shooting Star, better than any German jet, went into production before the war ended. America's huge industrial power let them work on many technologies at once, something Germany could not do. This difference showed the outcome of the production war. Germany's better technology in jets did not matter against America's ability to make thousands of regular fighters while also building next-generation planes. Quality without quantity did nothing in total war. Hermann Göring's arrest on May 8, 1945, by the U.S. 36th Infantry Division was the start of his facing reality. At first, defiant at the interrogation facility in Augsburg, he said German technology had been better, only beaten by numbers. Later, he was moved to Camp Ashcan in Luxembourg, a special prison for high-ranking Nazi leaders, where he faced intense questioning. In July 1945, Major Kenneth Heckler interviewed him at length, showing how Göring slowly realized American industrial power. "I knew American industrial potential was great," Göring told Heckler, "but their execution went far beyond my worst fears. That one factory at Willow Run made more planes than our entire bomber fleet at its peak. It was unbelievable." He was especially shocked by American logistics. Your ability to supply forces across two oceans while keeping production at home? This was beyond our understanding. We could not even supply troops 500 miles from Germany. You supplied armies 5,000 miles from America. At his Nuremberg trial, prosecutors showed overwhelming proof of American production superiority. Charts showed that by 1944, America made more planes in a month than Germany could in a year. Films of Willow Run's assembly lines played as prosecutors listed German cities destroyed by bombers from that single factory. Göring's testimony on March 14, 1946, showed how hard it was for him to understand the scale. I knew the United States had great economic and technical power, especially the Air Force, but I never thought they could increase aircraft production 100 times in 4 years. It seemed physically impossible. Prison psychologist G.M. Gilbert noted Göring's obsession with production numbers. He kept calculating ratios, comparing single American factories to all German production. He focused especially on Willow Run, calling it that damn factory that broke our backs. When he was shown that America had made 812,615 aircraft engines versus Germany's 241,675, Göring just stared at the numbers in silence. The math of defeat was clear and could not be ignored. The size of this transformation is amazing even today. From 3,611 military aircraft in 1940, America made 295,959 by the war's end, 97,810 bombers, 99,465 fighters, and 98,684 others. This showed not just more planes, but better systems in every part of production. 2 million Americans worked in aircraft production at the peak, including people from many backgrounds. Women, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, disabled workers, teenagers, and older citizens all contributed. This democratic effort did what forced labor, under a dictatorship, could not. Voluntary cooperation beat forced labor in every way. The people who entered factories in 1941, knowing nothing about airplanes, became, by 1945, the most skilled aviation workers in the world. They didn't just make planes, they changed how manufacturing worked. Statistical quality control made for bomber production became standard in factories everywhere. Automation ideas first used at Willow Run changed global manufacturing. The engineers who planned bomber assembly lines later built the Saturn V rocket. The women who riveted B-24s raised children who walked on the moon. This production miracle did not stop with winning the war. It started the American century. The money involved broke economic rules. Aircraft production cost $45 billion in 1940s dollars, equal to $800 billion today. The B-29 program alone cost more than the Manhattan Project. Yet instead of bankrupting America, war production created huge prosperity. Unemployment, which had hurt the country during the Depression, disappeared completely. Personal income doubled between 1940 and 1945. War bond sales by workers themselves paid for much of the expansion. Willow Run workers alone bought $45 million in bonds, funding their own factories' operations. Germany, on the other hand, used 40% of its entire industrial capacity for aircraft production by 1944, yet made less than half of what America produced. Slave labor, which Germany relied on more and more, was a disaster. Sabotage was common. Quality failed. Productivity per German worker actually dropped after 1943, while American productivity went up 300%. The production system built for war became the base for post-war prosperity. Aluminum smelters built for bombers made materials for suburban houses. Chemical plants that made aviation fuel also made plastics for consumer goods. Machine tool factories that equipped aircraft plants got American industry ready to lead the world. Beyond just making things, there was excellent organization. The War Production Board coordinated 184,000 companies smoothly. IBM punch card machines tracked millions of parts across thousands of suppliers. MIT's radiation laboratory, with 4,000 scientists, developed navigation systems that let American bombers fly in any weather. When combat showed B-17s were vulnerable to frontal attacks, Boeing added chin turrets in just 60 days. When Pacific missions needed longer range, they modified B-24s without stopping production. German modifications took months or years. American changes took weeks. This ability to adapt was just as important as the number of planes made. American aircraft kept improving based on what happened in battles all over the world. Information went from Pacific battles to Atlantic production lines in just a few days. German planes made in faraway underground factories by slave workers stayed the same, while American designs improved every week. The feedback loop between combat and production gave amazing efficiency. Pilots' observations reached engineers right away. Engineers' solutions reached assembly lines within days. Assembly line workers' suggestions went straight to designers. This democratic flow of information was better than the German top-down command. On October 15, 1946, just hours before his scheduled execution, Hermann Göring wrote his last letter. In it, he admitted fully the importance of the production war. The Americans won through industrial power, not military skill. We were not beaten by better soldiers, but by better factories. The nation we thought could only make consumer goods buried us under aluminum and steel. His last words to Gilbert were also clear. We declared war on an industrial giant while it slept. When it woke up, we were finished. They didn't just outproduce us. They changed production itself. Every part of their system was better than ours. Göring killed himself that night, but his final testimony is history's judgment on the production war. The Reichsmarschall, who had ignored American ability, died knowing that one American factory made more planes than his whole Air Force ever produced. Military historians say American production was the key to Allied victory. Without the huge material advantage it gave, D-Day would have been impossible, the bombing campaign unsustainable, and the Pacific War unwinnable. Richard Overy, the top historian of the Air War, said, "The result was decided not by fighting spirit or smart tactics, but by the weight of material." The Allies won because they buried their enemies under a mountain of production. The numbers clearly prove this. By 1944, America alone was making more military aircraft than the rest of the world combined, Axis and Allied together. This was not just a little more, but a huge order of magnitude difference. Germany was facing not just defeat, but total destruction. The importance of the production miracle went beyond winning the war. It showed that democracy is stronger than dictatorship, freedom is better than tyranny, and voluntary teamwork is stronger than forced obedience. The workers who made this happen were not slaves or drafted soldiers, but free citizens working together for a common goal. Hermann Göring's underestimation of American production ability was history's biggest mistake. His disrespect for democratic industrial power cost Germany the war and millions of lives. His failure to understand American ability doomed the Third Reich before the first bomber even flew over Germany. The jump from 3,000 to 100,000 planes each year showed that free societies, when facing an existential threat, can do the impossible. American workers did not just reach Roosevelt's impossible goal, they doubled it. They did not just match German production. They made 5 times more while still fighting in the Pacific. Today's leaders should remember Göring's mistake. Underestimating peaceful democratic nations or thinking free people cannot be productive because they like prosperity over conquest leads to terrible miscalculations. In 1940, America looked unprepared for war. By 1944, it had become an unstoppable industrial giant. The arsenal of democracy showed that production lines could be just as important as front lines, that assembly workers could be as crucial as soldiers, and that industrial power could decide victory just like military strategy. Göring learned this lesson too late, at the cost of his country's destruction. From his dismissive reaction to Roosevelt's announcement in May 1940 to his execution at Nuremberg in October 1946, Hermann Göring's story followed the path of Nazi Germany's collapse. His disrespect for American production became the symbol of the Third Reich, a regime that confused ideology with ability, that thought tyranny meant strength, and that believed racial myths could beat industrial math. The Reichsmarschall, who had laughed at American plane production, died knowing that American factories made more planes in 1944 alone than Germany made during the whole war. His mockery of democratic industry became history's most expensive joke, paid for in total defeat. America made 295,959 military aircraft. Germany made 94,677. But the real victory was not in the numbers, but in the way it was done. It proved that free workers could outproduce slaves, that democratic teamwork could beat totalitarian command, and that a nation of immigrants and diverse people could come together to do the impossible. The B-24 bombers rolling off Willow Run's assembly line every 63 minutes were not just airplanes. They were democracy's answer to tyranny. Each rivet was driven by a woman who had been a housewife only months earlier. Each engine was built by a teenager who had left high school to help the war effort. Each wing was put together by workers who had escaped poverty and discrimination. All of this proved that free people, when working together for a good cause, could bury tyranny under a mountain of production. Hermann Göring laughed at the idea that America could make 50,000 planes a year. America answered by making twice that number, changing world history in the process. His laughter now echoes through history as the sound of a terrible miscalculation. He ignored democracy's power, even though he understood neither democracy nor production. In the end, both democracy and production buried him, along with everything he represented, under 300,000 aircraft that turned his contempt into history's most complete defeat.